After Heather, we have, actually, you're an MVP alumni now, I think, April, aren't you? I think they stripped that of you when you went to work for Microsoft.
Yep.
Ex-MVP. April, who I'm sure we've all heard of, if not seen previous sessions before. And April's going to tell you about all of this new stuff with Project Oakdale and do a live demo. So loads of great stuff to come.
All right, so hopefully everyone's seeing a PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, we can see that.
Yep. Sweet. Cool. All right. So yeah, happy to be here to talk to you all about unleashing the power of Power Apps-based Teams applications. So a little bit about me for all of you who don't know me yet. My name is April Dunnam. I recently joined Microsoft as a partner technical architect. Before joining, I was an MVP. Sharon kind of said earlier, can't be an MVP and a Microsoft employee at the same time, unfortunately. Really active in the Power Addicts community and the community in general. I have a YouTube channel if you're interested in following that and seeing different Power Platform videos. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions at all, or if there's anything I can help you with on Twitter. I'm really active on there. You can find me at April Dunnam. And I also have a blog, aprildunham.com, or also known as SharePointSiren.com. So what I wanted to cover today, first, talk about why, at a high level, you want to integrate Power Apps and Teams. Talk about all the ways you can integrate. Now, obviously, I'm going to be touching on Project Oakdale, which is the shiny, new, awesome stuff that we have here. But I'm also going to talk about some other ways that we can integrate Teams and Power Apps together that aren't necessarily directly tied to Project Oakdale. And then, of course, as was already said, I'm going to do some live demos. So crossing my fingers that the demo gods are in my favor today for that. All right, first let's talk about why integrate Power Apps, Power Platform, and Teams. So we all know with this pandemic that's going on, we were probably using Teams quite a bit before this, but now we're pretty much living in it, right? We're having meetings in there, we're chatting, we're having calls, sharing files, and we're using apps and integrating workflows within it. So it's really become the hub for work in general these days. There you go. So it kind of makes sense, this being the hub for work, that we bring our business applications and workflows and processes to where our users are already living, rather than making them go out to yet another application just to use the business apps that they need to consume. So it's a great hub for your productivity applications, but then also your low-code apps that you're building. So whether it's your Power BI dashboards, your Power Automate flows, your chatbots, your Power Apps. So it's a great one-stop shop and platform to have those processes and custom apps, whether it's departmental solutions or employee resources you're building, or whatever it might be. Bringing that into Teams is going to be a huge win for the user experience, rather than having to make them go out to another application. And now is really the time to take advantage and harness the growth of both platforms. So this slide, I haven't had a chance to update it because, like Sharon said earlier, this number is null and void now. It's not 75 million. What was it? 175, I want to say. Sorry if I'm wrong on that. Forgot exactly what it was. Million daily active users on Teams. So that was as of October that they just released the other day. So yeah, it just goes to show people are in Teams, how widely it's being used. Coupled that with the Power Platform growth, right? 97% of Fortune 500 companies are using the Power Platform in some capacity to accelerate their application solution development. So it's just really, in my opinion, a match made in heaven there. So now I want to take a step back from the Power Platform and talk about Teams as an application platform itself, because I want to show and really highlight where some synergies are with Teams as an application platform and the Power Platform. So if we look at the things that we can do in Teams today, we have these things called tabs, which basically are like iframes to enable us to surface up rich content into these tabs within your individual Teams channels. We have things like bots that are able to, create chatbots so we can, have a conversation to get task work and done. So like one that I use all the time, a bot in Teams, is the Who bot, to find out like who someone is in the company, especially being new to Microsoft, right? I'm still trying to learn who everyone is. So I use that one quite heavily. Messaging extensions is another one. So we can query and get information real time when we're in a chat. Adaptive cards is another big one. So we can have those rich interaction cards within Teams. Activity feed obviously is, being able to get notifications on the left-hand side that, someone posted something in a team, or you have a chat, whatever it might be. And then the App Store being the big one. We have this rich App Store available for Teams with all kinds of different applications that we can integrate, whether it's Poly for surveys and feedback, or, Salesforce, whatever it might be. So where the synergies lie here, first let's take a look at tabs. This is a great use case for us to take our Power Apps that we're building or our Power BI dashboards and integrate those into our Teams channels as tabs. Now, this is going to be the path of least resistance to quickly integrating the current Power Platform assets that you have into Teams. The next area is bots. Talked a little bit about some new functionality. Power Virtual Agents is now public preview, I believe, for within Teams, meaning we can leverage Power Virtual Agents in Teams at no additional cost if you have the correct Teams licensing to build low-code chatbots. So now you don't have to know, Azure Bot Framework or be a developer to utilize bots within Teams, which is huge, opens a lot of doors. Adaptive cards. This is a great play for Power Automate. So if we've ever used Power Automate for the built-in approval process that are in there, you know that we can have that approval be routed through email, but what are we trying to do these days? We don't want to have our inbox cluttered, and we're kind of gradually reducing our reliance on email. So it's much better if we could have that offloaded to Teams and maybe just send us a chat or post in a Teams channel that approval card, and we have rich interactive buttons to approve or reject directly in Teams. Same goes for the activity feed. This is a great synergy and use case for Power Automate as well. So rather than spamming your email inbox with notifications, maybe that someone uploaded a file or you need to look at this item, post that in the activity feed for the users instead in Teams where they already are. Again, don't make them go to yet another place. Post everything where they already are. And finally, the App Store. So this kind of ties into Project Oakdale and some of the functionality that we've had for a little while now with Power Apps. So we're able to package up our Power Apps and publish those into the Teams App Store so that they seem like true native Teams applications. And I'll walk through a demo of how that works here in a little bit. Now that we have a good understanding of Teams as an application platform and where some synergies lie with the Power Platform, I want to take you through the history of how far we've come with the Teams and Power Platform integration. So if we take a look, this all kind of started back in November 2019, so about this time last year. We released the functionality for apps to be published in Teams as personal applications. So now, before, we could always kind of add our Power Apps or Power BI dashboards as tabs, which was great. But gaining that ability to actually package that up and have them pinned to the left rail in Teams and use those and make them seem like kind of real native Teams apps was huge. We saw a lot of uptick in people actually using that. And that was really accelerated when the pandemic hit. So fast forward to March 2020. And when the pandemic hit, we released a template called the Crisis Communication Template. And this was, a Power Apps-based template to allow people to, easily get information about the pandemic and say if they need to work from home for the day and get some FAQs and all of that. Well, we saw a lot of customers taking that template and packaging that up using the functionality that we released in November and deploying that within Teams because their users were all working remotely now because of the pandemic, and they just added it within Teams so that they could all use it and integrate with that seamlessly. So that really accelerated, hey, this is probably a big area we should focus on, right? A lot of people are using this as and integrating Power Apps and within Teams. So that's fast forwarding to August 2020 when we deepen that integration with Power Platform and Teams with what we're calling Project Oakdale, which of course I'll get into more here in a second. But before I dive into Project Oakdale, one more thing I want to touch on is at a high level with Teams and Power Apps specifically, what are our options as far as integration? Because I don't want to limit it to just Project Oakdale. We have a lot of options. So one, we can add our applications as what's called a standalone Power App as a tab, which I talked about. 2 and 3 are kind of similar but slightly different, and I want to explain the difference. So one, we can package and deploy our apps as personal apps. And a personal app in Teams mean I can go into Teams and add, say, this timesheet Power App as an application, but it's only available to me if I explicitly go and add it and for me to use. On the other side of that is we can package it up as what's called a tenant application. So if I build a Power App for like a vacation request application, and I want that to be used and seen by all of my Teams users and pinned to the left rail, I can package that up and save it as a tenant application and even take it a step further and use an app setup policy within the Teams admin center to mass deploy that out to all of my organizations. So when anyone new is added, as long as they're in that team setup policy group, they're going to have that application pinned to the left rail in Teams. So that's a really good way to mass scale and deploy these Power Apps within Teams. The other one on the other side of the coin here is you can integrate Teams data within your Power Apps themselves. You know, this could be getting a list of Teams channels that you're a member of. It could be from a Power App posting to a Teams channel, so a message. So ways to integrate on that side of the coin as well. And then finally, create fully integrated Teams apps with Project Oakdale, which leads me into a little bit more about Project Oakdale. So this was announced and at Ignite, it was a few months ago. So what this is really it's just a superset or subset of capabilities of the Common Data Service, but built specifically and applied to building applications within Teams. So it's one low-code data platform for Microsoft Teams. It's going to give you the greatness of the Common Data Service, the storage, the rich data types, enterprise capabilities, coupled in a true relational database, right? Coupled with one-click solution deployment, which is going to be included for every Teams customer that has like the right Teams licensing, right? Like an E3 or whatever that includes Teams, and governable by IT in the Power Platform Admin Center and the Teams Admin Center. And to give you an idea of what this one-click deployment is going to look like here, this animated graphic, it's going to see, look just like a normal app in the Teams App Store. You're going to click on it, you're going to say open, and it will open up, in this case, in the left rail in Teams. So it's going to make it easier for your users to find and install custom solutions in the Team App Stores and allow your citizen devs to easily put those applications there and know where to look. And great thing about it is you're going to have that built-in security and governance that we expect from something that's, a subset of the Common Data Service and built-in Teams. So you're going to have that enterprise-grade security, and it's going to be slightly different than the full-baked Common Data Service because it's going to align with your Teams roles and your Teams environment. So within Teams, we have owners, we have members, and we have guests. So when you package up and create an application in Oakdale to be used, you tie it to an individual team on a team channel, and then that's a database on the other side is created for that, an environment in that case. For the subset of the Common Data Service. So we don't have to worry about going and doing, traditionally if we created a Power App application as a standalone app and then wanted to package that up and put it in Teams, we would have to worry about, well, I have to secure and grant the permissions of my backend data source and the app itself, and have to make sure that everyone has access to this team. So it's kind of an involved three-step process that you had to go through. Well, with Project Oakdale, all that's handled for you. It's going to take the permissions of your Teams environment and pass those through to the applications and the tables that you build within Oakdale. But you will have the ability to assign different security roles to Teams owners and members if you need that. So the great thing about Oakdale and what's getting us all excited here is all this great functionality I just talked about is included at no cost for Teams customers. So a little bit how this is going to work. You're going to be able to add Oakdale to any team, and it's going to support a high volume, so up to 1 million records for each team out of the box. So Oakdale itself, you hear us talk a lot about it, in Power Apps, but like I said earlier, Oakdale also includes the ability to integrate Power Virtual Agents and build those bots within Teams as well. So you can use apps, bots, and automations backed by Project Oakdale embedded in Teams. And this, you don't have to just use Project Oakdale and its subset of CDS capabilities as a database. You're going to be able to still leverage all the existing Power Platform capabilities and connectors that you could in a normal Power Apps application within Oakdale. Now, obviously, if you want to go and use a premium connector, you're still going to have to pay the additional licensing. That's not going to be included for free, but you can use that functionality in there. And one of the things that really excites me, coming from a developer background, and one of the things that I did a lot in my business before I joined Microsoft was extending applications and Power Apps and integrating with custom APIs for my customers. Well, before we know that kind of cost an arm and a leg to do if we needed to create a custom connector to an API. We had to pay premium licensing. Well, if we're using Oakdale now, they announced at Ignite that you're going to be able to use this Azure API Management connector. So if you're hosting your API in Azure API Management, that means I'm able to call that API and do whatever I need to do to extend my application at no additional cost. And hopefully that should be released soon. I know at Ignite they said October 2020, which we have just a few days left. So we'll see exactly when that's coming, but it should be coming very soon. Really excited about that piece. And one of the other great things is you're going to be able to, there might be a case where you outscale an Oakdale application. So there's going to be an easy upgrade experience to the full-fledged common data service functionality that you're used to, like role-based access and extensible business logic and reporting and offline and all of that. So there's a good path to upgrade if you need it. I kind of put together this general feature comparison because I know one of the things that a lot of people wonder is, well, when exactly would I use for a data source then, say SharePoint list, aka Microsoft list, or Project Oakdale, or just the full-fledged common data service? So this chart that I put together just gives you a quick high-level overview of the general features. For one, if licensing is a factor, obviously SharePoint list and Oakdale are going to be the only two options included in your Microsoft 365 licenses. So you need to take that into consideration. Then we have to consider row limitations. So how much volume of data are you going to have in this application? With SharePoint lists, you can actually have up to 30 million records. So a lot of people that don't come from a SharePoint background don't realize you can have that much because we often hear that SharePoint's evil, we can't have a lot of data in a SharePoint list. And that's not because the SharePoint list can't physically hold that much data. It's because something called delegation. So we're trying to offload a lot of complex logic to the server rather than doing everything on the device. So that's what delegation means. So if you have a lot of data in SharePoint list, it doesn't handle delegation. There's less delegable queries you can do in comparison with, say, the common data service. So while it can physically hold that much, actually getting to that data with filters and surfacing it up, you can run into some issues. So that's kind of the high level of why you hear that in the community about SharePoint. With Oakdale, as far as row limitations, it's going to be 1 million rows or 2 gigabytes. And then going to the full-fledged common data service, you're going to get 4 terabytes of data for row limitations. So you can obviously see, the common data service is going to get you the most storage capacity there. As far as environments go, now SharePoint list or Microsoft list, they don't have the concept of an environment. Project Oakdale and CDS does. With Oakdale, you get 1 environment per team. And this is important as of right now, you can only have up to 500. So, if you're using teams at scale and you have, 1,000 different teams, well, you're only going to be able to leverage Oakdale within 500 of those. Okay? I'm not sure if that's going to change in the future, but that's what it is today. With CDS, full-fledged version, on the other hand, you're going to get unlimited environments. Now, we have to talk about relational data. So this is, again, one of the most common complaints and why you might not use SharePoint as your data source and might want to use Oakdale or the common data service is because SharePoint lists, they aren't a relational database. You can kind of fake it with SharePoint lists, right, with lookup columns. So you can have 2 different lists for like a customer and a contact. And you can say, well, I'm going to create a lookup column in my contact list that looks up to my customer list and kind of quasi makes a relational database, but it's not truly a relational database. So that can lead to some, performance implications and within your Power Apps applications when you're trying to make a relational database out of something that actually isn't. So if that's, I don't want to discredit SharePoint list as a data source because there's a lot of great use cases for Microsoft lists and SharePoint lists within Power Apps if you're building, simple applications. But there's probably a time where you need to kind of outscale that and have a truly relational database. So that's where Project Oakdale or the Common Data Service would come into play. The rest of the features are more CDS specific features. So the ability to import and export solutions. We know we don't really have that baked into Microsoft list, but we can do that in both Oakdale in the Common Data Service full version, Model-driven apps, I have a check here next to Oakdale that we can do that. It's not baked into the public preview right now, but it's my understanding that that's going to be coming down the pike and is intended to be integrated within Oakdale, the ability to do model-driven apps. Data visualizations we can do in Oakdale and CDS, and then the rest, so things that we can do in the full-fledged CDS that we can't do in Oakdale today would be mobile offline, relevant search, and exporting to data lake. So if you need those features, you're better off going the full-fledged CDS version. And just a little bit more summary of the data platform capabilities included in Oakdale. So again, to summarize, one environment per team. You're able to promote to the common data service. You have backup, disaster recovery. You do have the concept of solutions. So you can have one unmanaged solution per team. You can have managed solutions with the classic import and export and relational data and all of that. Encryption at rest, all the stuff that you would expect here, and Power BI reporting isn't there today, but is coming soon. All right, I've done a lot of talking, so now it's the moment of truth for some live demos like I promised. I want to actually show 3 different things, if I have time here. So 1, working with the Teams connector inside your Power App. 2, how to get Teams context in your Power Apps and a way to use that. And then, of course, we have to show Project Oakdale. I know a lot of you are probably dying to see Project Oakdale, so I'm thinking I might just start there. And then we'll go and show the other use cases there. So first, let me just start from here. So to get to Project Oakdale and use it, this is all going to be within the context of Teams. So from your Office 365 portal, you're going to want to open Microsoft Teams. And this is going to work in the web version of Teams or the client version, so whichever one you're using. So I'm going to use the web version for this, since I'm on my demo tenant. And first thing you'll want to do, if you don't already have it, is you need to click on the 3 dots and go to the Find an App and search for Power Apps. And you'll want to add the Power Apps application as a personal app for you to start building Project Oakdale applications, which you see that I've already did, because it's showing here on the left rail. So what I'm going to do is going to click on that. And this is going to open up, so everything is going to be within Teams. You're going to have a fully baked Power Apps editor within Teams within Oakdale here. One of the things that I really want to point out is if you're just getting started with Oakdale and you want to see the art of the possible and maybe have some applications you can start using today, there's these 3 different templates that you'll see here. We have employee ideas, inspection, and issue reporting. And the thing I love about these templates is they're super easy to get started with. You'll see that one-click deployment experience that I was just touting about earlier in the slides. So if I want to use, for example, the employee ideas one, all I have to do is click on this template. It's going to pop up here and it's going to show me kind of a preview with some graphics of what all this template can do. And I just have to say add to a team. And then I can search what team I want to add this to. So if I do a search for HR, for example, you see it's going to give me all of the different channels within the HR team. So I select the channel that I want this particular template to be associated with. So if I wanted to put this on the recruiting tab, I can select that and say set up a tab. And this is going to do all this configuration in the back end. When you're first doing this, I noticed in my testing at least it can take up to 5 minutes to properly provision everything. So you do have the option to post to the channel about the tab. So anytime you add a tab, you get this option. So if you don't want to spam your channel, you might want to uncheck that. We're going to click Save. This is going to go through, like I said, and add this template into here. You see you get this tab already added that's saying Installing Apps. So you can go and navigate away from this, do what you need to do. You don't have to stay on this page. It's going to give you a little progress indicator here. But I've already installed this. So I just got to remember which one I installed it on. It might have been this recruiting one. Let's see. That might not take, hopefully this doesn't take quite, yeah, I did. Okay. So you see here we have employee ideas. So this is the application that you're going to get from the end user perspective. So it's going to load. This is what live demos, cross my fingers again. Yay. Okay. It loaded. So this is the end user or the admin user, I'm sorry, experience of the employee ideas application. So kind of the concept of this is you can have these campaigns of what you want to get ideas from. So I might be having a Christmas party, so I can see from this, and I want to get ideas of what should we do for a Christmas party this year. So I can click on the idea itself, and I can see, how many days is left to submit ideas for this particular campaign. It's going to go and hopefully load here in a minute if it'll cooperate with me, and I'm able to go in and submit an idea for that. You see it even summarizes while I'm waiting on that to load the weekly top ideas, and you have the ability within this app to like upvote the ideas that you want to see in your backing. So it can filter by that. So it's being a little bit slow, maybe because it's installing. Here we go. So here's the idea itself. So I can see here's the Christmas campaign. No one's submitted an idea for this campaign yet, so I can go to the Submit an Idea button. And you see like things look a little bit different in this application versus if you were to go into the Power Apps portal and create something similar. The controls, you might notice, look quite a bit different. The gallery here looks different. This is because within Project Oakdale in the Power Apps editor, they kind of revamped the controls that you're seeing using the Fluid framework. So you're having fluent controls in here. And I think this is something that's going to be propagated down to the normal Power Apps editor as well, this look and feel of the controls. But it's something that you can take advantage of today if you're building your applications within Project Oakdale. So for example, I can come in here and fill out an idea. Maybe we need to have a virtual potluck for Christmas, can give a description. We even have these nice kind of buttons that we can select, what impact our idea have and how much will it cost. That's what everyone wants to know, right? It all comes back down to the cost here and how much effort. We also have the ability to attach photos and files. So another thing I want to point out with Project Oakdale in this lightweight CDS that you get behind the scenes, you have seamless file uploads. So I can click File here. I can find something, attach the supporting file, submit the idea, and that's all I had to do. It's really kind of baked in. If you ever try to do file uploading with a SharePoint database, it's really a pain. There's usually a flow involved to help you upload the file and see it right and display it on desktop and mobile correctly. So one of the things I love about Oakdale is just the ease of interacting with files and images. So it gives us a nice message that our idea was submitted. We can turn back to the list and we see there's my new idea, and I can see there's an attachment. I can upvote that with a thumbs up. And all the UI you see is kind of mimicking the Teams UI. So this button, for example, is automatically inheriting the Teams purple, and it just looks like a true native Teams application, right? You don't have any Chrome, so if you ever try to integrate a regular Power App in here, you might see that you have some space at the top, so it just kind of looks a little bit different. Well, with this, you don't have that. It's all baked in, fully integrated. So let's see how our install is going there. Looks like it's still installing. Like I said, that could take a while, but luckily I already had that installed, so I can walk you through that template. Now, next thing I want to show you is, so that's how you can use one of the templates. Well, how do we actually build one of these from scratch? So let's go back to the Power Apps tab. First thing I want to point out is, how do we see the Oakdale applications that you've built? So if you click on this Build tab, you see that's going to break it out by team. So since these are tied, like I said, in an environment per team, you'll be able to toggle through here the individual teams that you have, and you're going to see two different tabs. So you'll see one built by this team. So those are going to be the custom applications that you built. And two, you're going to have this installed app. So if you use one of those template applications that, like I just showed, those will show up here on the installed apps tab. So let's go back here to HR. You see that kind of, if we want to create a new one, we can just go to new here and we can say app. And you see we have the two options. Like I said, chatbots and app are integrated here. So this is also where we could go to create a new Power Virtual Agent chatbot as well. I'm going to select app, and this is going to open up the baked in Power Apps Canvas editor within Teams for us. It's going to get a few things ready. First thing it will do is ask us what the name of the application should be once it's done. And like I said, hopefully this cooperates with me. Here we go. So we need to give our app a name. So I might call this Customer Management. We'll just go with the simple scenario and click Save. And you'll see this looks a little bit different than the normal Power Apps editor. So you have all the same functionality. It's just things are, again, you have the different controls that look slightly different, but then the interface itself, some things are moved around a bit. So just to compare, here's the normal editor. So we have home, insert, action, all of that. Switching back to Oakdale, we have home, build, and about up there, and all these settings are kind of in different areas. So that did take me a little bit of getting used to when I first started working with this within Oakdale, is just, okay, where is this in this version of the Power Apps Editor? Just something to keep in mind, but all the functionality is there. You just might have to dig for it. So we have this blank application. You see what it's doing here is it's actually pre-populating some information for us. So it's kind of assuming, and we can delete this if we need to, depending on the app we're building, that you can have this gallery on the left that's going to show some items and have the ability to create a new record. And then on the right, it's going to give you a template to have a form to see the data, right? So it's pretty nice that it gives you this built-in template for an easy form control. So kind of like if you went and said, build this application for me the old school way, and it created a browse and an edit screen and all of that. Well, this is kind of that concept, except it's on one nice screen where you can do all of that. One of the things that you'll see that this is using that's important is these containers. So you have a right container and you have a left container. And why this is important is because these templates that these Power Apps that you're building within Project Oakdale are responsive out of the box. And one of the ways that they're doing that is with these container controls to help make that responsive. So this means if you're using Teams on the desktop like I am, or on the mobile device, this one application will work. You don't have to worry about custom coding and doing all this crazy logic to make your application responsive, which is great. So from here, if I go back, I can click Add Data. And from here, you notice it kind of looks like the traditional Add Data tab. We have our Common Data Service objects. We can expand out connectors, but we have this new option for Create New Table. So if I click that, this is going to give me an inline experience to add a Project Oakdale, aka lightweight CDS entity and table into this application. So for example, I can give it a name. So I can go with the contact scenario. All settings, via advanced settings, expand that out. You can give and define a plural table name if you want and customize that. So I'm just going to click create and we'll see this awesome table experience that it gives us. So it's going to open up this, and if you come from a SharePoint background like I do, this probably looks really similar to the modern SharePoint list experience. And I love that they kind of mimic that because I think that's a really rich and great user experience that we have there. So first thing we can do, we can just click this plus. So we have a name field built in, which is great. So I can reutilize that, say for the last name. If I want to add a first name tab, I can just click the plus and I can first give it a name. So I'll call it first name. And then we have all these different data types to choose from this dropdown. So you see we have things like text, but we also have like email and phone. So rather than having to code in our own validation, if you were, say, using SharePoint as a data source in this case, you have that validation built in thanks to these email and phone data types. But for first name, let's just use text and create. And it's just that easy to build out your database. So maybe I need their phone number. So I might create phone and choose the phone object. If the advanced options for each of these, you have the ability to specify the max length. That's another thing we can specify there. And you see how fast. We might want email as well. So I'll use that email field to create this. And then the thing that's really awesome about this, so I just created my whole table that I want to use as a data source for my app. Well, now I can actually go in and just inline add the actual data. So I can say Dunnam, April, can put in a phone number. And if I could type right, that would be great. And inline, I can just keep tabbing through here and adding data. And when I'm done, all I have to do, it's going to automatically save this. So I can just click the close. It's going to save the table. It's going to add that as a data source and automatically update my app for me. So you see all I did was I went in, I built out easily my columns in the table. I added some data. It updated my gallery here, my browse gallery. It pointed it to the data source that I just added, so contacts here. And it updated my form control that's in this right container. It updated its data source to contacts. So that's all I had to do to really get kind of a fully functional application. So if I just preview this, I can click on either of these records, and you see it's updating the form control to an edit form or display form in this case with the data that I select. If I click new record, it's going to change that form control to be a new form, so I can add in another user. Just click the check. It's going to add that to my data source. I can delete and edit and everything I need to do from this application. So that's really how simple it is to get started with Oakdale and build a fully functional responsive application. Of course, we have all the stuff, like I said, we can do in native apps. We can add more connectors. So if there was some kind of reference list in SharePoint I needed to use, I can still do that. I can go to add data. I can go to my connectors. I can click SharePoint, look through all my SharePoint sites here and integrate any data that I might need to. So maybe that's where I'm storing my, birthdays, whatever it might be. And this is only showing because I was doing a video earlier about DLP policies and I restricted SharePoint in the common data service. So that's why it's giving me that. Forgot I did that. But if you don't have that DLP policy, it would work just fine. All right, cool. So that's, a general overview I wanted to show of Oakdale. Now let's go into the other scenarios I talked about and how can we integrate the Teams connector in a Power App. So one way that I'm doing this, and I'll just show you the app first, is if you look in Teams on the left-hand side, I have this app called Teams Provisioner. So this is flipping it on its head, the integration with Teams and Power Apps. And, oftentimes we might lock down the creation of Teams to users in order to better govern that and eliminate team sprawl. Well, when you do that, you still want to give your users a way to request a new team if they need it. So a way to do this is possibly with a Power App, right? You can have a Teams request tool where you can go in and can see the teams that are currently out there, and you can request a new team. So you can come in, you have a form control. Maybe I want a team called Cambridge UG. I can choose if I want this to be public or private, and I can define the owners for the team. So I might need myself to be an owner and the members as well. So I'll make, let's see, I can have David in there and he'll be a member. So I can go through the tool, submit the request. In the back end, what this is going to do is it's actually going to create and run a flow that's going to check some policies that we have in the back end of like how should a team be created. First of all, does one already exist? Do we want to allow gifts in the team and all those different governance policies that we'll predefine? And it will go and create that. And that's all done, using some interaction with the Teams connector, both in Power Apps and Power Automate. So to do that, I have the Power App open here in edit mode, I'm going to click on our data sources tab and we just search for Microsoft Teams and we'll add this Teams connector. So the way that I'm using this first is if we go to the app on start, you'll see that I'm creating a local collection called My Teams. And I'm calling the Teams connector, and one of the methods that we have in that is get all teams. So it's just going to go return all the teams that the current logged in user has access to and put that into a collection for me. And I'm surfacing up that collection here within my gallery so that I can see what teams are being used. So just one possibility of what you can do within the integration here within Teams, the Teams connector. There's all kinds of different methods. If you see, so if I just go and add a button, oh, that's interesting. This is new. They've updated the Teams editor, like changed on me. Did you see? To look more like the Oakdale one. That's awesome when that happens, like in the middle of a demo. But we can go here and we can add in, say, a button just to see some of the options that we have with the Teams connector itself. There we go. Yeah, that's the fluid controls now too. So it looks like that might be coming sooner than we thought, the fluid controls to your environment. So be on the lookout for that because it just popped in my demo environment here. But if we do Microsoft Teams, you'll see we have all kinds of options that we can do here. So directly from your Power App, for example, you could post channel notifications. You can post messages to channels and reply to messages and user notifications. And you can even subscribe to channel flow. So lots of possibilities that you can start taking advantage of today with the Teams connector within Power Apps. The next thing I wanted to show, though, is how do we even more tightly couple this integration? So to demo this, I have a Power App that I built as a normal Canvas application for a training portal. So I want to have a one-stop shop for my users to be able to come and get Power Platform training, right? So I've curated this custom list of training. But what I wanted to do is when I add a new training, so if I click here and go to new, and I want to put a new, so maybe I have, let's see, Project Oakdale. I have a training on that. I give it a link, and then I need a video URL. So let me see. Just go to my YouTube real quick. And this might pop up with my me talking, so sorry about that. There we go. Let me just grab one of my videos so that that will propagate through. Okay, here we go. So we'll go back here, I'll paste that in the video URL and save. So what I want to have happen is when I save this, I want to post to my team and let them know that, hey, there's new training out here, go watch it. I wanted to have it take them directly to the page. So if we click on one of these, you'll have a details page where you can watch the video in line in the app and see the information like the category, additional resources, and all of that. So I want this to post a message and have them take them directly to this particular training. So what's happening in the background, if I go to the Teams tab, I have a training site. So in here in the general channel of the training site, you see I added that Project Oakdale training, and what it did was post a message that new training was added, click here to view course. So when I click that, what it's going to do is it's going to open up that Power App that I have embedded and take me directly to that screen. Now, if you've ever tried to do this before, you know, if I would have did this the old school way, this was going to actually take me outside of Teams and open up this application, which isn't the ideal experience. So to accomplish this of getting this to open up within Teams itself and in the embedded app that you have, you can use something called Teams Context and get the Teams Context to open up the application. And there's a great blog article out there that talks through Teams Context, and I'll put a link to that in the notes after this. But to do that, so if we look here on the app on start, it's pretty simple to get Teams Context. So there's a few things that we can get from that. But we can use a function in Power Apps called the param, which allows us to look for query string parameters and get the data. So one of the things that we can get is the group ID and the channel ID of an application that it's embedded in and pass that through into our app. So we can just use the param and pass in the group ID property and the channel ID to read those parameters and set that into a global variable. And one extra thing that I'm doing here is this particular training application, I have both here on the left rail, but I'm also using that in the training channel as a tab. So how do I know if the application should open up in this tab or in this application pinned to the left rail? Well, I can do that with a simple if formula. So I can say if my var channel ID equals brackets channel ID. So if the application you're loading isn't in a channel, then it's just going to show as this bracket channel ID instead. So if it's pinned to the left rail, that's what you'll get. Otherwise, it's just going to return a GUID of the channel ID that it's embedded in. So then I can set another variable called app context. And so I know if there's no GUID for the channel ID that this is a pinned application. But if there is a channel ID, it's a tabbed application. So then I can key off of that inside of my app. So how I'm doing the posting to Teams is, again, I went into my connectors and I've added the Microsoft Teams connector. So here on my save button, if we take a look at that, what I did is I'm checking again to see that app context. Is this a pinned application or is this a tabbed application? So if this is a pinned application, what I'm using is the post message to a channel action within the Teams connector. And I want to pass in the group ID is what it expects, the channel ID, and the body of the message that you want to post. So you see down here, if it's a tabbed app, I want to get whatever tab that they're using this application in and post to that Teams channel. So that's where I'm using these variables down here. Now, one thing that you need to watch out for when you're posting the message to a channel is you got to make sure you're formatting it correctly. So you might look at what it's expecting here and say, oh, okay, it just needs a string. I can just type in some text here. Well, it actually expects two different properties. So it needs a record value so that when you're passing in the body, you have to put 2 curly brackets, and it needs a content property and a content type. The content property is where you're going to put in the actual text that you want to post into the message. And the content type is where you're going to put in HTML so that you can have like hyperlinks and all of that rich text type functionality. So what I did here is I'm just hard coding some HTML. That new training has been added. I'm pulling in from my training form that I just submitted, the title. And I have a hyperlink with an A tag where I'm taking in the URL of the Teams tab that we have, and I'm passing in the channel ID and all of that, and saying click here to view course, right? So now that I have that, I'm able to read that and automatically navigate to the right screen. Right? So if I go back here to the app, so here, there's one property if you want to do, this is called deep linking for those of you who haven't kind of tried to do something like this before. So essentially when we click on that link, we want to go to a specific screen in this application. So what I'm doing is there's a property when you're using Power Apps within Teams called sub entity ID. This is one of those query string parameters that we talked about. So that's going to be in there. You can use that to pass deep links into your Power Apps applications that are embedded in Teams. So I'm going to get that and set that to a variable with our param function. Then I want to check if that has a value. So if that's not blank, I want to get the selected course. So I want to look up, I'm going to pass in the ID in that, and I'm going to look up to my training list and find an ID that matches that. And then I want to navigate to training details. Now, if it is blank, then don't do anything. Function as normal and just have it open the regular landing screen of the application. This is kind of the whole process and how it flows through here. You're just going to pass in the query string parameter here. That's what I'm doing on the save. So you see that I have sub entity ID, and I'm passing in the last item ID for the form that I just submitted for the training. This gets posted to Teams thanks to our Microsoft Teams connector and the post message to channel action. And then my app reads when they click on that there's a sub entity ID with an ID value in it, looks up the correct item, and surfaces it up. So just a holistic solution in a way that you can really make this all integrate. You never have to leave the experience of Teams to make this happen. All right. Yeah, that's really all I had. Let's see. I'm going to play from the slide again. There's a lot of resources that I wanted to point out here, because again, I'm just scratching the surface on the integration opportunities of what you can do with Teams and Power Apps and the Power Platform in general. So if you want a good overview of Project Oakdale, there's docs.microsoft.com link that you can reference there. More on the sample apps. They have help documentation that goes through each of those sample apps, like the employee ideas one that I just showed, and shows you the specifics of what it does and how to install it. In general, guidelines for Power Apps and Teams as a whole, not Project Oakdale specific, and the things that you can do, including how to pass context variables like I just showed. There's some good documentation there. More on those fluent controls I talked about, so the nicer looking controls that look more like Teamsy controls. There's an article about that and the implications of that. There's reference information for deep linking like I just showed with that training example. If you want to see what all the Teams connector can do within your Power Apps and Power Automate apps, check that out. And then my YouTube, I have some videos that cover all of those Project Oakdale templates, for example, and other Power Platform stuff. Yeah, so with that, I just really wanted to open it up for any questions that you might have or anything you might want me to show.
We've got quite a few. I'll hand over to Luke to ask those for you.
Yeah, sure. So firstly, it's a very common one. Will the slides be made available, this individual slide deck, after the presentation? We'll obviously have the recording, but then your slide deck, where can people grab that from?
Absolutely, yeah. I will probably send it on to Sharon or something, and we'll figure out how to best get that to you guys.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll either pop that up on the YouTube channel or on a blog somewhere. That's fine.
Lovely. So next, does Project Oakdale have an effect on the storage capacity of CDS, such as file storage, database usage, etc.?
I don't believe so. I believe that's like kind of its own separate thing. It's not, you're not going to have to buy, it's not going to limit whatever current CDS storage that you have. You get if you exceed it and need to buy additional storage, but it shouldn't.
Okay. So this question goes back to when we started going into the demo with Power Apps. What about gotchas when you don't have option sets? Must choices be used instead, or is there another option?
I think right now you just have to use choices. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't really know of another option, unfortunately.
And lastly, this is more of a comment as compared to a question, but I guess it could be turned into a question. So at the start of your presentation, April, there was a discussion about the size 500 for, I'm just trying to remember it myself now.
Yeah, I'll go back.
Yeah, if we go back.
That was the number of teams you could have with Oakdale.
Yeah,
that was over here somewhere. It goes on. Yep, this one. Yeah, it's in the summary one, up to 500. Yep.
Lovely. So there was a comment made that 500 is a bit too small for some larger organisations. This user works with 35,000 people, so they will use up 500 very quickly. I guess the question that will come out of this is that number going to go up?
I don't know. I mean, if I were a betting person, I'm guessing I would think so. I'm sure, like I said, this is still in public preview, right? So they're constantly going to be adding stuff to it and seeing how, usage goes. And I would suspect possibly, but I can't say for sure.
Okay, lovely. Is there any more questions for April whilst we are here? If not, again, I'm sure you can tweet her afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. Please feel free to reach out on Twitter, or there's a contact form on my blog. If you're not on Twitter and want to reach out to me that way, I'm always happy to answer any questions.
That was a really great session, April. And I think maybe you answered more questions than you've raised, to be honest, because there's been an awful lot of noise about this, but we've not actually had, a great deal of information out there in the public, and certainly getting a live demo of it before people go and venture and play on their own tenants is really, really useful. So you can see exactly what the power of it is. I mean, I think it's a game changer. I really do. So this on top of Microsoft Lists, I think we're just, getting to value faster, literally. It's just speeding up the pace all the time.
Endless possibilities.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm just going to put up the final slide. Do continue to, I realise we're slightly time delayed, so do continue to ask any questions of either Heather or April as we're just going into the final slide and closing the session. Let's just pop this one up. So with that, thank you so much for attending. Like I say, we're having events quarterly, so the next one will be roughly around the February time. Now, whether that's going to be in person or not remains to be seen. But let's assume that that isn't going to be in person and that's going to be remote, and we can get access to great speakers like the two ladies that we've had today who were based in the US. What is it that you want to see? Do let us know in the discussions and the announcements on the Power Platform User Group website, or reach out directly and let me know if you'd like to volunteer to speak. We'd love to see some of you guys speaking, or if there's something in particular that you want to see addressed. Oakdale is really topical at the moment, and so that's great to get that content kind of fresh off the press. And also, it's really important, I think, the stuff that Heather covered in terms of the communities that we're building at the moment and how we need to be able to, take time for each other and consider carefully what it is that we're doing and saying. And so this has been a really great session for me, but what do you want to see? What's coming up that's really exciting for you on the Power Platform that you want to see addressed in those sessions? Let us know. We'll get some content out there for you. So this recording will be available on YouTube. If you just search for me, Sharon Sumner, you should be able to find the channel. I put it up on there because we've put all of them up on there. We've got our own little playlist directly for the user group content. So that will be available on there. And we'll also, like we say, include some links in there to the direct download content for you. So again, thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much to our fantastic speakers. Ladies, you really knocked it out of the park today. Really great stuff. Thank you for coming along and speaking for us. And thanks to everybody that attended live and who watches this on YouTube later on. So again, thanks to our sponsors, Sam, who came on early for Nigel Frank, and thanks to everybody for attending. We wouldn't be a user group without you guys. So please do continue the love, and we'll see you all again in February.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, everyone.